How to stay grounded through challenging times. Well, we're not actually going to go through a set of steps with this one. What we're going to do is we're going to increase our learning around what the actual overall concept is. And the reason we're going to do this is because once we get to the point of not dealing with actionable steps and seeing what the bigger picture is, then we can then subsequently create steps that may not necessarily already exist in order to make the same outcome, but actually in a more efficient manner, or a more aligned manner based on the actual individual and the circumstances that they're actually facing. So when we have a look at grounding ourselves through challenging times, what does that actually mean? And when it comes to each individual, the circumstances and the subsequent outcomes will obviously be different. And the easiest way to umbrella that and encompass everybody within the same concept or structure is to create a position whereby we're going to look at why we'd be ungrounded in the first place. And one of the key principles is actually that of personal alignment. So if you're running habits, patterns, behaviors that associate and are related to somebody else who you've learnt them from, or somebody who comes in that potentially has your best interests in mind but then doesn't actually follow through, then we find that we create coping mechanisms and survival adaptations. And constantly in our lives, we're running these in order to then deal with anything that we're presented with in the current environment. And when they're challenging, what that subsequently means is that the identity or the person that you are hasn't yet got the skills or the ability to manage the situation from a place of control. And that solely is due to a lack of alignment or a lack of embodying the identity that's required to be able to effectively deal with those issues. So we're going to have a look at going back to you as the individual and you deeming there to be a challenge. Because the challenge comes about, and it could be for any subsequent number of reasons. Because what we're looking at is you have soul growth, you have personal growth and development, you have events and circumstances in your life that are designed to propel you forward in order to then be able to deal with things correctly. And then we have a load of other layers and sub-layers within that structure that can then be comprised together in order to create a larger system or structure that then needs to be worked through in the same way that you would work through basically levels on a game or a quest or a mission. And ultimately, the end result is to solidify your existence and your way of being in terms of alignment in order to then be able to pass or project yourself forward beyond those challenges and then take in the lessons for your own growth and development. And once we take those lessons in for our growth and development, then we solidify the identity, because at that point, once we are aligned and we are running based on how we would do things, then there has to be a level of grounding, because you're bringing that existence down in effect in order to then project it outwardly into your external environment. And the external environment then has to mirror back to you the internal environment. And in many instances, the external and the internal environments are disconnected and disjointed. And what you then get is a projection reflection mechanism that then subsequently has to be dealt with in order to balance and align, in order for you to then progress and then get other challenges and further development that will then come to the forefront at that point. But when we look at the grounding again in itself, we have to become that of which we wish to see. And when we do so, that involves mental constructs, it involves redefining how we exist, how we think, act and feel, and then that in turn creates our reality and then further develops a feedback, feed-forward system that allows us then to get further progress and further development. So when we're looking at grounding, it's not ignoring problems, it's not avoiding issues, it's not going out of your way to hide or not be in a position whereby you're facing challenges. And in fact, what we're looking to do is get from A to B quickly in order to equip ourselves with the abilities, the skill sets and the knowledge, and ultimately changing the way we think, act and feel in order to change how we actually deal with those challenges. And then subsequently we get the feedback that shows that the work that we're actually doing will then propel us forward, so that these challenges then aren't actually being faced. And when they're not actually being faced, it's not because we're avoiding them, it's actually because we've dealt with them and they don't need to be there anymore in order to show us anything for our current stage in life. And when we look at grounding from a holistic perspective, it's all about mind, body, soul alignment. It's not about basically taking time out. It's not about resting. It's not about avoiding. It's not all these things that are in the mainstream that is pushing us down the avenue of perceived outcome, but not actually seeing any real results. And those action steps that we're then going to take are stuck with us, and we become them, which ultimately, once you get past the resistance and the support stage, then the embodiment of that will then lead to you naturally then aligning and becoming more efficient. So you then won't need to ground, and you won't need to battle with coping mechanisms, survival adaptations, or subsequently anything else that gets pushed your way, because slowly but surely, as part of the healing process and the healing journey, you will then naturally be balancing these out from a place of your own personal alignment and from a place of finding out who you are, rather than being somebody and not who you are actually meant to be. So the easiest way to go back and deal with how you ground yourself in challenging times is to equip yourself with the resources, with the knowledge, and ultimately with the energetic alignment and the personal healing and development, in order to then face challenges, knowing that the bigger picture is that the person you're becoming on the other side of it is far more and will be worth far more than the actual battle that you face within the challenges. But obviously the issue that we face with that is we get the challenges up front, but then there's a delayed gratification element because you don't see the results of it, and they're not necessarily tangible until much further down the line. And then even then we don't necessarily reflect on them and analyse where we once were and where we're going to. And then that in itself would then solidify the fact that we're actually developing and we're actually growing. And then the person that we're becoming is obviously the end result of all of that healing work that we're doing. And then that in itself becomes grounded in the existence and in your human experience. So there's a bit of food for thought, and there's something to think about. So if you've got any questions, if you've got any of your own experiences, if you want to know anything more, then drop them in the comments below. But otherwise, until next time, trust the process, and it's bye for now.